You're listening to a Time Machine podcast. Old Movie Time Machine. An adventure through time and or space.
Dishes are done, man.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Old Movie Time Machine. Oh, whoops. All 90s. That's right. This is the show where we're talking about motion picture films, sometimes made between the years, sometimes of 1990 and 99, somewhere around there. It's Oops All 90s. We're talking about 90s shit. That's what we're doing. We're looking at it and evaluating it through a cultural lens from our modern viewpoints in time, something.
Good job, Justin.
Thank you. Moving right along. I'm your host, Jay-Z, joined as ever by my panel of incredible international experts at being human in the early 21st century. Starting on my right, Shrishma Naik is in the house. Hey, yo, Shrishma.
Hello.
Welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Oops, all 90s.
It is all 90s.
And sitting to your right, and also sitting to your right across the ocean of time and just the Atlantic Ocean in general, my sister and yours, Carolyn Naoroz. Hey, sis.
Hey there.
Welcome back to the program. I know you're excited. I'm excited because today we are talking about, well, you know, I think we discussed this last week. Rules are made to be broken, right?
Correct.
We set these rules down. We have, at this point, we've taken away almost all the rules, and the ones that are remaining, we are breaking them. So last week, we talked about a movie from 1989. Oops, all 89.
Mm-hmm.
This week, we're going to be talking about not a movie at all, but actually a television show, because this is part of our cultural analysis of the 1990s. Today, we're talking about 1993's SeaQuest DSV. And it is so exciting. Just real quick. Now, Carolyn, we grew up in the same house. I know you've seen the show. You are very familiar with it. Shrishma Naik, had you ever heard of this show or seen it?
I don't remember having seen this show. However, when I watched the introduction for the episode, there was they introduced the dolphin.
Yeah.
And that dolphin image unlocks some core memory, but I'm not able to I can't visualize what that memory was. So I have a feeling I watched it, but I just don't remember.
You're referring to Darwin the dolphin, of course.
Dolphin.
Now, I don't think he speaks in this episode, does he?
Oh, he speaks?
Yeah. Okay. So he doesn't, but that's part of the magic. And this is why I was borderline, should we watch the pilot, which is like a TV movie, basically, which explains all the groundwork, or should we just go right to the dumb shit?
Interesting.
And I chose the dumb shit.
I'm glad we went to the dumb shit, because this was interesting, to say the least.
Yes. Because here's the deal. I've gone back to this show a couple times over my life since it's aired, because I was really into it at the time. I was 12 and this came out, so it was perfect, right? And every time I go back to it, I like it a little bit less. It's not a good show. It's actually kind of boring for the most part, is what I've discovered. But this one is hilarious for many reasons we are going to talk about. Real quick, though, I'd like to lay the groundwork for where the show comes from and where we are at in our window of time of 1993. 1993, you guys.
Bob Ballard was a big deal.
Now, did you watch the end credits, Shrishma Naik?
I did watch the end
So
credits.
You saw the man.
So I saw the man giving this future prediction of the fiber optic cables and the beneath the sea, which we live in today, because all the technology, all the internets that we have today is real.
Okay.
It's manifested
But
itself.
why am I not living under the ocean?
Right. That's my real question.
Because, I feel...
I didn't know there was a whole world under the sea.
I feel disappointed.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're still waiting for our hoverboards and all this shit. It's been a very disappointing future so far. Do you know who that man is, Bob Ballard?
No.
Okay, so that man is famous and became a cultural figure in the 1980s because he is the man whose team discovered the Titanic.
Oh, interesting.
So when I was, and we're going to talk about Titanic, and I'll probably talk about my relationship with Titanic, the boat, not the movie.
Not the movie. Okay.
But they're coupled, right? I was
really curious as to what relationship you have.
When I was 7 years old, I was so into the Titanic. I had we'll talk about it on the episode, okay? But like, I know a lot about the Titanic. And
of course you do.
Yeah. We all have our interests, right? Like I like airplanes and boats and shit like
hold on. It was
I'm just not surprised.
Okay.
It was a big moment, and I don't know if maybe this was just an American thing, but I feel like the discovery of the Titanic was a big deal.
It was.
I'm still waiting for the updates on the Amelia Earhart potential plane that they might have found in the ocean. And I'm like, where, Bob, go out there. I know he's already done a search. He needs to go out there. I need to know if this is her plane or not. I need to know if this is the Lockheed Electra.
He needs a little bit more spotlight. I think he's an interesting example of somebody who is not an entertainer. He's sort of like a Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Of his time, where it's like, you are now a personality, like a public figure, but really you're a science nerd, but also you have this ego and you like to, be a persona. So that's Bob Ballard.
Right.
But also he's talking about and endorsing this show and the science behind it and everything. But back to basics. It's 1993. This show came out in the fall, part of the fall schedule. The reason it had so much heat when it came out mostly comes from the fact that it was produced by Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
That is important because Steven Spielberg's 1993 is arguably the greatest year any film or media maker has ever had. Okay. So 1993, summer of 93, he changed his filmmaking by releasing a little movie called Jurassic Park.
And can we just say it totally holds up now?
It does.
Yep.
I love
it. I will watch it anytime. I feel like the special effects hold up. That movie holds up for me. It's timeless.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Agreed.
Love
It's
it.
one of the greatest movies ever made. We're going to talk about it. We're going to do a whole app on it.
I'm sure we are.
The same year, he also produces a little telly show that was maybe, I don't know if it's seen as important now, but at the time was very important, called Animaniacs. That is groundbreaking animation, writing and everything like that. That was cutting edge at the time.
Okay.
Very influential. He also released in the fall this show, SeaQuest DSV.
Okay.
And then after this show comes out, in I think it was November of the year, he releases his second movie of 1993, Schindler's List.
Oh.
Arguably the most important Holocaust film ever made, right?
Okay.
And the film that eventually secures his first Best Director Academy Award, Best Picture, he sweeps the categories.
Right.
He finally gets acknowledged as an artist and not just an entertainer.
Okay.
Aside from the fact that he is the most skilled filmmaker to ever live, probably. He's a very talented man. He's a very influential man. E.T. still makes me cry.
Right.
What are we going to do about it? So anyway, he's having a heater, right? The 93 is all Spielberg all the time. He is a magician.
Right.
Anything he touches, you're on board for, especially if you are a movie nerd like I was.
Correct.
Little boy who liked to learn about
the movies.
Yep. And, we talked about this a little bit last week with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in our backstage special effects experience, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What I didn't touch on at the time, though, is how incredible that was, because this is an era where movie magic is still a thing. You don't know how any of that shit works.
Yeah, so
it's still like a mystery.
Yep.
That changes in another 7 to 10 years from 93. Early 2000s, basically when DVDs come out and all of a sudden there's room for bonus features and behind the scenes documentaries. That changes everything. And now we all know how movies work, right? And you can go on Disney Plus now and you can watch them shooting The Mandalorian in front of the volume screen and see how all that magic works. And it's awesome. But also it's a little less special. And at the time, the only way you learned about that stuff was through reading, nerdy magazine articles. I've got all those magazines.
Which you had all of.
I had them all. Or occasionally a couple books at the library would explain some of that stuff. But pre-internet, you guys, this was all mysterious. So when you went to MGM Studios, Florida, and did the backstage tour and the tram tour and everything. Like that was a real like behind the curtain look at how this stuff comes together, and it was magical, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what led little Jay-Z to film school, was like seeing the lights and the cameras and how it all works, and I was fascinated, right? It was very special. It's not so special these days just because it's so accessible.
Because it's so, everyone knows how it's done. There's,
and you can do it at home,
online. Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That's a real game changer. Yeah. So, and I've had this conversation with friends of mine who have kids who grew up at the same time period and had the same interests and everything. And he's got 2 or 3 kids, and he's like, they're not interested for whatever reason. Like
they're not into it. And they have they have it in their hand.
Well, and that's what he's saying. Like, I'm looking at it as like, this is all I ever wanted. My whole life was in my computer. Right. I can make a movie, like this. I would have killed to have access to this power at that age. They don't care. Yeah. They're busy, because they're TikToks or whatever.
Whatever they do these
days. TikToking. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's the groundwork for 93. This is and why this nerdy little submarine version of Star Trek got so much heat when it came out. Additionally, Roy Scheider is the star of this, the Captain Bridger, right?
Right.
Do you recognize him from anything?
His face is familiar, but...
Okay. He's the star of Jaws.
Oh.
I had the biggest crush on Roy Scheider. See, I mean, this
really?
When you're
Scheider?
Like, yeah, I know, but I loved this TV show. I loved Jaws. I mean, and then I ended up marrying a gray-haired police lieutenant. So obviously I have a thing for a gray-haired man in uniform.
You found your Chief Brody. Wow.
I found my Chief Brody.
So that was part of the marketing, was like, look, Spielberg and Scheider are back together. You
in
love
the
Jaws.
Ocean,
right?
In the water.
The world loves Jaws. Jaws is I don't know if it's still as famous as it once was, but certainly back then, still considered to be a top picture. Like, this is important, I'd be curious to talk to younger generations, and if like they see Jaws and if it influences them the same way. Like, that was a transformative film. Maybe if we do old 70s Time Machine, we'll talk about it. But anyway, that was part of the heat, was like Scheider, Spielberg, boats. We're in. We love Jaws. Also, it's the future.
Yes.
Also, we're using this new, again, this is the dawn of computer graphics.
Yeah.
So seeing
it's
that
pre-pandemic future. It was 202018 was the year that they gave.
I know.
FYI.
Oh my God.
I didn't know.
I was like,
we're not even
we're 5 years past that,
I know, but I was like, in my head, I was like, wow, okay, pre-pandemic. All right.
That being said, so this morning I did a real deep dive into subsea cables because I was really curious about what Bob Ballard was talking about, the fiber optic network. Yeah. So I know a lot of that right now. And what he was describing exists.
Exactly exists. Yeah.
It happens. Yes. This is it.
This is what happens. I know that, so, there's some conflicts going on in the world today. So there's people who are trying to, those are kind of where they're located in the sea and which seas they're located in is a point of contention.
Yes. It's a lot of negotiation happens.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. They're expensive. Mm-hmm. The technology is formidable. It's really interesting how they lay these down there and what it takes, and also how fiber optics work.
Exactly.
I'm having a coffee delivered by Chief Brody right now.
What? Oh, hey!
They say, "Hey, do you want to wave?"
Hey, no.
He says, "No, not
I'm not camera ready."
Here.
Oh, neither are we.
No,
sorry.
You're not.
Excuse me.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. He said, "Oh, David."
Anyway, so the fiber optics and everything, fascinating, and it did actually lend me a little more insight into this episode. And it was this episode presents a plausible scenario for how maybe in the future this will work. Actually, I could see this being the case. Because we're talking about physical cables. I don't know how much the audience knows about the internets. I'm just going to start saying internets instead of internet now. We
can. Yes.
I'm going to try to get this going.
All the technology, it's not a maybe. It is.
It is.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right. And we had video calls in this episode. Like there was a lot of things where I'm like, yeah, okay. So we're here. I mean, they couldn't conceive of it being in our hand in a form of a smartphone, maybe, but I'm still disappointed that I don't live under the ocean with a talking dolphin.
I know, with a talking dolphin. But it's actually not too bad. Like I feel like they guessed pretty well.
They did.
And they did the best they could. And also...
And they were, kind of the plot line was they were trying to hack...
Yes.
Right? The World Bank computer system, which hacking today is like one of the biggest like political tools that people use to control the...
And anonymous and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And, bang on, I think.
Yeah. So not too shabby. And also, if I put myself back into 1993... this must have been sort of, this is true science fiction, right?
Yeah, it was all imagination.
Yeah, it was, it's all speculative. And like Bob Ballard says, like right now, we're laying down, hundreds of miles of fiber optic cables in one day. And we live in one day.
That one day.
It's kind of awesome.
It was very surreal. Like I remember like the whole episode went by, but that part I was like, holy shit. Like we're there. Like I am watching this episode on this computer because of exactly what you're saying.
Fucking outstanding.
So it was great. It was an amazing experience. But was there a reason you picked this episode in particular?
Yes. So I'm going to give you the elevator pitch for the show real quick, which is it's in the opening credits. 21st century, mankind has colonized the final frontier on Earth, the ocean. Right. And now because there is political strife in the future, we have the United Earth Organization, which is basically trying to, or United Earth Oceans or something like that. It's
United Earth Oceans. It's the UEO.
The UEO, yes. Okay, so it's like an international coalition of peacekeeping under the sea, basically. Mm-hmm. So same thing with Star Trek. Our mission is to discover, not to go Star War or whatever, even though this show does veer towards underwater battles at a certain point, and it just becomes that type of show, right? Adventure of the week. But when it started, it had a noble purpose of we're going to explore underwater and what life might be like, and this is the vehicle to do it. The SeaQuest submarine, this thing that's shaped like a harpoon that is made by this thing called the video toaster, which was an early computer generated imagery machine that was very cutting edge at the time.
Did you say the video toaster?
Yeah, it's called the video toaster.
Okay.
It's like a brand. I got to use one years later for transitions, like editing a thing in high school. It was very interesting. Anyway, this type of technology was not seen on television though at the time. It's normal now, but seeing that submarine computer image like floating through the sea or whatever, like that was very special. You didn't see that anywhere, basically. You saw Star Trek had a little bit. Pretty limited though. This was a little bit plussed up from that, I would say. So it's kind of like cutting edge tech wise. The reason I chose this particular episode is number one, the internets,
right?
Which is I'm going to change the internet to internets. We're just going to make it real. Why not? And number two, it's very Lucas heavy,
right?
So Lucas is played by Jonathan Brandis, right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned this last week. He's the best of us, right? Okay. So at the time, I'm a 12-year-old boy, white boy, who likes sciencey shit and adventure and all this stuff. So Lucas becomes I want to be like that guy. And because he's 5 years older, he's also cool.
Right.
So like
David's question was, why is this kid on like a military or paramilitary or whatever submarine? And I was like, honey, you have to understand that that character was our window into this very adult, very serious world. And so that's what made it like kids like me want to watch it.
Yes.
Because I thought I could go and live under the ocean and have a talking dolphin.
Yep, exactly. And you related to that. So he was sort of like cool guy for me. And like, I tried to dress like him.
Right.
And
interesting.
So his whole, like the look for Lucas on this show, played by Jonathan Brandis, who you would know from The Neverending Story Part 2.
Ooh.
He was also in a movie called Sidekicks that we're going to talk about with Chuck Norris, and a movie called Ladybugs. His story is tragic, unfortunately. He committed suicide in the early 2000s because his career wasn't where he wanted it to be. But, talented actor.
Right.
And also apparently was a real like teen icon, like Tiger Beat kind of, him and DiCaprio swam in the same waters, right? Of like, girls love this guy. Right. And you can see why.
You can see, yeah, absolutely.
He's a handsome dude. And I'll tell you what, he's got the hair, right?
Right.
I want to talk about 90s hair, 90s dude hair real quick.
Okay.
Because it's aspirational for me. Like, I don't have that kind of hair. Big, voluminous, like awesome hair. I wish I did because the look at the time was long at the top, short at the bottom, right? This I would trace back to another one of my heroes, representation. Like, I want to be like that guy. River Phoenix in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He plays young Indy.
Okay.
And he has, you'll see it, long in the top, shaved on the bottom, right? Great fucking look.
Right.
And River Phoenix is fucking cool as shit, right? Always has been. Rest in power. Another tragic young death. But he's in, I don't know if you...
I don't remember.
Have you ever seen Stand By Me?
I have seen Stand By Me.
He's in that.
But I just can't recall his face. It's brother of Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just his face that's coming into my mind.
When you see him, you'll be like, right.
Yeah.
So you've got River Phoenix, incredible 90s dude hair. Also shared by Christian Slater, young Christian Slater, same thing.
Yeah.
Jonathan Brandis, I noticed he's got it, but it's also a little bit more mullety too. It's a little bit more grown out towards the bottom. So slightly different. Also, if we want to stick with young Indy, when Young Indy becomes a television show, the guy who plays him, Sean Patrick Flannery, also same thing. And he's living in like World War I time. So it's kind of like a throwback to that a little bit too. Anyway, it's an awesome look. DiCaprio has it, of course. Johnny Depp for a period had it as well. It's that greasy look you're talking about, Carolyn, back in the Romeo and Juliet episode, but long, greasy hair, short on the bottom. It's a fucking great look. If you could pull it off, do it, kids.
They are doing it.
Good for them. They should be.
They're still doing it. It is still the haircut of high school.
I loved it. I'm glad to hear it. I'm not in the loop. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on with
well, I mean, got the kids. The
teenagers.
Those heartthrob boys that can't clean their bedrooms. But yeah. They have great hair, and this is the style. Absolutely. I mean, to a point where even like I have pulled out photos of Leo from this era. Yeah. Or like Brad Pitt and been like, go take this photo. Cause they're like, well, I want to keep the length and the top, but like the back is like a mullet now. And I'm like, take this photo to your hairstylist and they will leave the shit on the top and they will take off the bottom.
Yep. Now let's talk about fits real quick because Lucas has, like I say, I tried to cop his style.
But there's a lot of mock turtlenecks.
This is the 93 version of what they thought 2018 would look like.
Well, that's what's so funny about this episode is when we actually get to Node 3 and we see how other kids are dressing and it looks like they just raided they raided the costume closet and the set of Living Single.
Exactly.
It's incredible. Or Blossom, you know? But Lucas's look was very specific. And this was a trend at the time, and I rocked it hardcore, which is, yes, Carolyn, you have it, turtleneck, sport jersey. So I would rock baseball jerseys over a turtleneck.
Right.
Hockey jerseys over a turtleneck. That's another one too. Oh, nice. That was very early 90s. That was my middle school. It was just like trying to cop that look and be cool, wishing I had hair that would do that thing, but also my father cut my hair until I was 13 years old. So a lot of limitations, right?
Right.
So that's the Lucas look. And I still find it very winning.
Right. I
still see those baseball jerseys and I'm like, I should get a fucking baseball jersey. That looks awesome, you know?
I think also if I were the costume or wardrobe department for this particular TV show, I would be like, this kid needs to have some kind of a uniform quote unquote, that's like his signature style, because everyone else on that ship is in a uniform, in a jumpsuit with a mock turtleneck. So I feel like that was like their version of being like, just go buy baseball jerseys. We don't even care what team. He doesn't even seem to have a team that he likes more than another.
No, he just likes baseball jerseys.
And just get a matching turtleneck.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to real quick, a couple sentences, explain the plot of this episode, because we don't really need to talk about it. It's really confusing.
I mean, I just, if I can take a stab.
Please.
Yes. They're in, okay. I don't know how he ends up at this other place, but he goes to like the school where all this young children, not school, but a part of the community where all the young children are hanging out. And they like brought in young kids because they're more likely to stay on longer because they're more excited about the task at hand. And then
they're also geniuses.
And they're
too.
geniuses, right? They, what do you call it? They scouted. Recruited is what the word I was recruited these genius younger kids because they were, and these are, I guess, computer hackers or computer geniuses of some kind. And then he meets, and I think they've been interacting through the internets and trying to build some kind of software of some kind.
Yeah.
Right. So now he kind of finally gets to meet them in person, which kind of indicated to me that they hadn't thought about video calls or Teams.
Yeah, it's much more anonymous.
It's much more anonymous and just through the text or whatever. But then he meets Mycroft, not to be mistaken for Mycroft Holmes.
Oh, very good. Are we all on the same page about who Mycroft is and where the name comes from? You know Mycroft.
Yeah, Sherlock's brother.
Thank you. All right, if you don't know at home, fucking Google it.
Google it, right? Go watch Sherlock Holmes.
Jesus.
Or go read Sherlock
Where have you
Holmes.
been? Yeah.
And he's apparently like, he did a master hack back in the day, so they idolize him. And then they're all hanging out, and it turns out that he wants to hack the World Bank.
Yes.
And do something not that, Lucas is not ethically on board with. And then something happens, and then, he ends up shutting it down or something. Like he kills the hack or something like that. And then they all go off together somewhere.
And then it's fine.
Yeah. Do they indeed hack the World Bank or not? I don't think they do.
It's that part of the episode. Great summary, by the way. Thank you so much. Like, you really nailed it. It's the place that they're at. It's called Node 3. And I think the idea was in the future where we live now, we're going to have so many of these cables that like there need to be stations to monitor them. And as I was reading this morning, there actually are not stations, but there are these sections of the cables that do enhance the signal basically because it's such a great distance. So in a way that's kind of a node, it's just, there aren't people there, but this is like a classic, like bunch of bubbles underwater that people live in. And it's like it's like a dormitory basically for these kids to
where they're hanging out and being scientific.
Right. So they do their work, which is monitoring the internets and the fiber optics and all that, and the signals, and making sure and then they exploit it for these hacks, right? Okay. In the meantime, what gets really fuzzy for me, and I've watched this episode a few times over the years, and also just recently, and I was rewatching it last night, trying to figure out, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? Because when they actually get to the nitty gritty of what the scheme is and why they're doing it and all that, I'm just like, I'm so fucking lost right now. And
I didn't get into the detail, like. They were saying stuff and I was like, okay, cool. And then I got the and I didn't feel like rewatching it because it wasn't like that great.
It's not that good. Yeah. And honestly, we're here to talk about these kids and how they dress.
Right.
Exactly. And what so when we were doing Old Movie Time Machine, Cold War, we did this with Destination Moon, right? Where it's like, okay, technically this is set in the future, but also these are the dreams of the time that this was, so this is what we thought in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because 2018 looks a lot like 1993 fashion-wise when you go to this place.
I must say, in terms of the diversity, I think they envisioned a very diverse future. And I must give props.
We have an African-American lead as Mycroft here.
I think there were even like Asian people of Asian descent. There was, so I think they had when they put that vision together, it wasn't a fully white vision. It was, a very diverse vision. So I must appreciate that.
Thank you for pointing it out, because this is part of the 90s dream that we were trying to achieve. And we've talked about this, seeing more representation and more diversity, and how this is a process and how it's important. And it's, I'm not going to say it's a direct one-to-one link or whatever, but this is what leads us to an Obama administration is we get comfortable seeing other types of human beings and races and cultures. And because we are these biological creatures that are programmed to fear things that are different, because it's a survival mechanism, all this shit. But now we're advanced. We have society, civilization, we have self-awareness, we have consciousness, all these things that we're still to this day trying to cope with and learn to adapt to. But this is part of the process. Yes. So I think you're totally right. I think it's wonderful to see it's not all just white dudes. Right. There are, we have women who are featured prominently. We still have a woman working the front desk at Node 3, apparently. Whom they reference, and then she never has a scene. We only see her in the background. It's very bizarre.
But the young lady, he was,
Red Menace,
right?
Yeah.
She didn't fit the typical just gorgeous and standout blonde hair. She was I'm a nerd. I wear glasses,
right?
But I still know how to take them off and be real feminine and
kind of horny,
right?
Okay.
I mean, being stuck under the sea, I suppose.
The kissing was so awkward, and
there
was also the moment where he hacked where Jonathan Brandis hacked the thing, and she went in for this makeout kiss, and then Seth.
Oh, he tried.
Seth Green this weird threesome moment, and I was just awkward. It was so weird. It was so weird.
Carol, I'm so glad you brought up the kissing because it's uncomfortable to talk about children and their sexuality, right? It's I don't want to. I'm an adult. I don't want to talk about it. But the kissing was really bad. They were all really. It was like watching fish in a fish tank do that mouth opening thing that they do, a gold. Yeah, right. But then they just pressed faces together. That's what the kissing was like.
I do feel like this episode, and maybe it was Jonathan Brandis's first on-screen kiss or something. Who knows what the context of this is? But I was just I need to turn away. This is so awkward.
Yeah.
And the fact that then it wasn't just one kiss, that would have been more than enough. It was
it's a makeout.
5. It was 3 to 5 makeout scenes.
Yeah.
They just kept going for it. And I was wow, guys, the PDA. But that awkward 3-way Seth Green going in for the hug while the girls me, I was just what?
Yes. So
why did the director not say this? No, we're going to high five it, guys. High five it.
SeaQuest was a troubled production, as its Wikipedia page will inform you, on many different levels. But so you brought it up, Carolyn, but we need to address the fact that our homeboy Special K from Can't Hardly Wait is in this episode. The great Seth Green.
He was.
Who we did not dap up enough in the Can't Hardly Wait episode, by the way. Again, we say it all the time, but this is a show about time, not movies, right?
Right.
But also it's kind of about movies. And we do talk about performers we like. And I like Seth Green a lot.
I do.
He's a funny motherfucker.
Yeah.
He's Scott Evil.
Yes.
He does Robot Chicken. He's a talented guy, and he's a child actor who seems relatively normal as an adult.
Right.
And it's great to see him in this.
I mean, he was played such a normal character, it was almost where's the...
His hacker name is Wolfman. His real name is Nick. I think his character is weird.
Right. But
because
yeah, actually, now that you say it.
I was surprised by how kind of standoffish he was, but also they're friends. I don't know, is his character jealous of how talented Lucas is at hacking? He's not jealous of the fact that him and Red Menace are making out, but also it's a weird character. I'd be really, hey Seth, I'm going to offer you a Winona Wincott. I'm going to offer you this. If you want to come on and talk about your episode of SeaQuest DSV,
we'll even put you first in the list. We'll make it a green Wincott Winona.
Yeah.
Winona Wincott.
Absolutely. We're going to bump you up. We're very busy, of course, but we'll make the time to talk to you about the internets and Wolfman.
See you on the internet.
See you on the internets. That is a drop, by the way. You will be hearing it at the end of the show. Forever. Dishes are done, man.
Dishes are done, man.
So it's wonderful to see Seth Green also in his, I can't remember, there's a movie we're going to talk about called Airborne, which is about skateboarding. Because that's a very 90s thing.
It is
right?
very 90s. Absolutely. X Games, anyone?
Yes, exactly. Right. And this is pre all that. Like this was the lead up. This is like scumbag skater stuff. Yeah. Love those guys. Very closely associated with punk rock and that kind of alternative culture. So he is in that movie as well with his total 90s hair. 90s hair, by the way, evolves from this great early 90s, what we've been talking about, to a really aggressive center part that then becomes like a full, like almost a bob type of thing. I rocked this in the early 2000s. We used to call it the Drew Barrymore boys on the side look. You know, it's a very, that is dated.
Right.
I feel like the River Phoenix look, greasy look, or the DiCaprio look, which DiCaprio still rocks that look today.
Right.
That's timeless.
Yeah.
The 90s version, the aggressive skater cut, it's we're going to see it and I'll point it out, but it's tough. It's like 80s hair. It's like 70s hair. It's like 60s mustaches where you're like, that shit doesn't work these days. You look bad. Anyway, I'm not sure where in the timeline Airborne falls, but it's got to be around the same time because we see Seth here. His hair is long. He's got his long skater hair. He's got earrings. Can we talk about the fits? Let's talk about the outfits we see on Node 3. A lot of flannel. It's 93.
A lot of flannel.
It feels like, I mean, they envisioned a lot of like technological advancements. They didn't really think about the costumes. They left that very 90s.
They kept the jeans, 93, baby, where we are wearing. The only item that I noticed that was missing that would have really pinned this down to 93 was a fad that happened that I was not a part of, thankfully. Silk shirts. This was a real thing. If you were in, say, middle school, probably high school as well, but like silk shirts, button-ups, you would button the full sleeves and everything, never roll your sleeve, button the whole thing, button the top button, but silk. So very expensive, very irresponsible to give to children because they will ruin it. But that was such a look. They're very close to it here because everybody's wearing button-ups. Everybody's tucking in their button-ups as well. They're also rocking vests.
Right.
I forget that vests were a fashion statement in the early 90s. Again, Red Menace, she raided Blossom's closet, I think, because Blossom was definitely
that was Blossom's closet.
Would be the female version of this show for boys, probably. You know, of like you know, I'm sure young women of the time saw Blossom as like their Jonathan Brandis, right?
I mean, I watched Blossom.
Okay.
But I did not think of her as...
You didn't see yourself as a Blossom. Were you a 6?
I don't think I ever really related. It was just always entertainment to me. So I don't know if
you never had a hero, like an icon?
Not from like the movies.
Not even television?
No.
Music? Who was your style icon in the 90s?
I don't think I had one.
Wow.
And I feel like because I was watching Bollywood and, you know, the Hollywood movies.
Yep.
So it was kind of like a mixture of all of that.
Okay.
So I kind of did like, you know, like I think I was more people within my immediate circles that I would look to, like what were like certain, you know, people. Okay. Like that dress.
Well, maybe I'm making a gross assumption then that maybe this is not the norm. Carolyn, did you have an iconic person that you wanted to be like when you were younger? So like, you know, 12, 13?
Yes, but I'm just so skewed. I wanted to be Audrey Hepburn.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, like
different.
Right. I mean, I did try and do, I think, like the Rachel haircut at one point with like the layers. I didn't know it. This was like an 8th grade.
Great hair.
but no, it did not. That did not work for me. And then I also couldn't cut off my hair because I then really wanted like short hair, like Natalie Imbruglia or like Audrey Hepburn-esque, but I couldn't because I was a dancer. So but I just let it grow.
Carolyn, that's a great point you bring up with Friends, because I think probably Friends is the death knell of early 90s River Phoenix hair, because
they had short hair.
Chandler had that hair.
His hair was long season 1, but season 2, all the boys get haircuts, and that became the look. And it was like, I want the insert your friend here. Mine was Chandler. Give me the Chandler. Like that. That was the thing. But I think that was the sea change, if you will, was Friends, because Friends was so fucking enormous during that time period.
I have to just go back on one comment. So I think the fashion influences started more in the later 90s.
Sure.
And I think it definitely came through hip hop.
Okay. So who?
Well, this person is not really hip hop, I would say. But I say hip hop, but it was kind of like I would be watching a lot of hip hop videos and pop videos.
Right.
But the one that really, and I'm so sad that I'm saying this, but the one that is, because she's got nothing to do with hip hop at all. Yeah. But Pink.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Pink's great though. Right. I mean, and Pink has a look.
She did have a look. And
she's a strong figure. I mean, what a great icon that's a winner.
Right.
Because it could have been Britney.
It was definitely not. It was definitely not Britney or Christina Aguilera. But I don't know. There's something about Pink's vibe at the time.
Pink had major vibe. Are you talking about like first album?
First,
Pink?
like when she first came
the motorcycle.
Out. Right,
okay,
exactly.
Okay.
Like this.
But I would say I would agree.
Like baggy. Like I needed my pants had to be like low, and which my mom hated. It was great. It was all amazing times.
Was this before Just Like a Pill, or? Because that's a second album. She goes through like a transformation where she gets a little bit more rockin'.
I think it's after the transformation. Like I can't remember, because there was one specific video where she had her pants till here, and all I ever wanted to do was wear big baggy pants.
Sure, that was the late 90s. Right. That was the rage.
Exactly. Yeah.
Boys and girls, big pants. Now it's back apparently. Okay, so we have our vests, we have our jeans, we have our great haircuts, can we talk about, I'm here, so let's talk about the music real quick.
Is there music?
There, in the background, there is a pop song, which I imagine that they were like, okay, we need something that sounds, what's the future sound like, a pop music or whatever. It sounds like weird vampire music to me. I was trying to make it out. I need to do more homework on it to see if I can find out if it exists, if I can hear it. But this show is normally an orchestral soundtrack. It would be your standard strings and horns and John Williams-y type of things, because it's an adventure show or whatever. So it's interesting to see when we go to like youth culture in the future that this would be the music. Also, the music is illustrated here with the band posters that are on the walls of like the canteen that they have. And that was fascinating to me. It was just seeing like what they thought future furniture would look like, and how, because on the submarine, that's very niche and specific. Right. That will look utilitarian and very, pipes everywhere and people in jumpsuits. But as far as living outside of a military complex in the future, they thought it was a lot of IKEA lamps, and they thought it was a lot of neon colored band posters in frames on the wall. There was a piece of art hanging on the wall outside of Red Menace's door that was just like feet, like 3-dimensional feet in a sort of like tiled formation. I don't know. We see Red Menace. I can't remember what her name is.
Right.
Is it Joanna or something like that?
Linda.
Here's a secret, you guys. She comes back in another episode, and we're going to watch it. And it gets even more uncomfortable. Carolyn, if you hated the kissing in this episode, the next episode that we watch, and it will be in the future, far in the future, but I'm going to bring it up. There's a condom conversation that is really uncomfortable that we need to discuss. But anyway, she does come back. and they do proceed to kiss like fish again. Anyway, we see her dorm room, I guess. Any takeaways from that? She had art on the wall. She had sort of like a lamp filled with purple liquid, I feel like was on the table.
I didn't pay so much attention. I mean, I didn't think,
you were too turned on by their awkward makeup.
No, I don't know. I guess I was, because it was a projection of their version of the future. Mm-hmm. I think my key takeaway was, they got some parts right, but some part was basically they didn't think about it. They just kind of, they went more, I guess, a little minimal in style and aesthetic. Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a budgetary thing. Right, maybe it's just we got to grind these out. We got a whole season to make here. Let's not go nuts worrying about how big the future lapels are on this shirt. Right. Let's just go over to the set of Living Single, grab some funky vests and bring them back here. Okay. And we're going to make a SeaQuest episode. That's what this is. Let's talk about, just real quick. I mean, the entire idea of Node 3, by the way, of having the entire idea of Node 3 and having all of these teens living in this enclosed space.
That was actually my stomach.
With minimal.
It was my dogs. I'm so sorry. They're like, you guys have been on here for like 2.5 hours.
I know the dog is bored by our conversation. And Shrishma's hungry, and it's getting real dicey.
It's getting late, done, guys.
I know.
Okay, we're
almost done. I promise you. Okay, there's not much to talk about here.
Right, but I think go ahead. Why don't you finish? I'm sorry. I was really rude of me to interrupt.
No, you speak your truth. Come on, it's old movie time machine. It's all 90s. Dishes are done, man. I'll see you on the internets. Okay. So I don't even know what I was talking about. Let's talk about. So there's this whole plot in the show where Lucas and Captain Bridger, aka Roy Scheider, have a sort of de facto father-son relationship. Yeah. So the backstory for Roy Scheider's character, Captain Bridger, is that he lost his son in a war. Okay, and so the pilot episode, Carolyn, I mean, isn't it like they have to like call him back or whatever? He's retired and like, can you give us a real quick rundown of the pilot?
Real quick rundown is he's like a 30-year veteran of the Navy. And to the point where it sounds like he was, whether it's an instructor at the Naval Academy or whatever, like career to a point where he was also teaching. And his son was in the Navy as well. He was killed in some kind of war. And then he promised his wife, like 6 years prior to the opening episode, that he would leave the Navy life behind. And then also his wife ended up dying. So like he's on this like tropical island with Darwin the dolphin, who's his only friend. And the Navy folks come back and they're like, you designed this ship. This is like your dream and we need you to come back and do it. And he's like, absolutely not. I made a promise. And so they're like, well, just come take a tour. And then when he's on the tour, they just ship the ship off. And then he ends up becoming captain and realizes through a conversation with Lucas that, sometimes promises change because life changes.
Okay. So, and I think we get it in this episode as well. Thank you, Carolyn, for that succinct description of the pilot television movie extravaganza, SeaQuest DSV. And I think they explained it in this episode that Lucas's parents kind of just dumped him on the ship. He's gifted, but they have their own issues and are kind of self-involved. And so anyway, they have this sort of proxy father-son relationship, but Lucas feels misunderstood. The episode starts with him feeling out of place everybody's running into him on the bridge. And maybe if when we do the next episode of this far in the future, we'll talk about the actual other characters who run the SeaQuest because they are the stars of the show.
I think this one was a little different.
Yes.
It was kind of Lucas's little offshoot episode.
Right. And I just wanted to talk about that because I thought this was cool. Right. Because they were a little bit older. It was cool. I wanted to be like them. He had a girlfriend. Right. I mean, 12-year-old me, all I want is a fucking girl. Like, I'm just starting to realize, all I want is a girlfriend. Right. and he gets to have awkward fish kisses with Red Menace. Nice. The part I wanted to bring up before, all these kids living together, somebody's getting pregnant, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe they would.
Everybody's pregnant on there. Like everybody. Node 3 is on the border of collapse because all of a sudden people are going to be
having babies
late. Yeah. And all we're going to have a crisis, a fucking internet crisis because Node 3 couldn't keep it locked down. Sorry. The drama on the actual SeaQuest, which is the name of the submarine, is that Bridger is trying to cope with the fact that Lucas is getting older and breaking away a little bit and wants to spend time with his peers and be appreciated as well. Lucas is spot on about getting paid, by the way. He does do all that shit on that boat. He needs a salary. He needs a negotiation class so he can, get some money. You're a hacker, dude. Get that money. So Bridger is sort of like moping around Lucas's bedroom, and we do see him picking through, I think I mentioned this before, but Lucas's mini disc collection. That's what he's sort of like filing through. So the mini disc, again, was like way more data than a CD, but it was also a format change. So it never quite took. It was like people were like,
another change.
I just changed to CDs, you guys. I don't need it. But in a previous episode, which I also considered for our show, but is actually too boring to watch, so I wasn't going to put you through that. The mini discs do come into play, and he plays like future pop for this other young lady who comes on board, and they have awkward kisses as well, but it's much mini discs, very much of the future. So anyway, we see that in this episode.
Right.
But
I guess they didn't think about the cloud.
Right. Nobody thinks about the cloud.
Right. It's close though. It's
so close.
Right.
We couldn't even conceive of it. The video call, the fact that we have a payphone effectively, but it's video and we're using the internet to broadcast and have this beautiful clarity and everything, but they couldn't quite leap to the fact that, we're just going to have smartphones.
Right.
It's all in our pocket.
Right.
Just like it's very hard for us to realize at some point that will just be in your head. That'll be like the Neuralink. It's happening, right? It's just, you'll think it and you'll be able to pull up that brain Wikipedia page or whatever. It's hard to conceive of, but they got close. Yeah. They did pretty well. So I don't know. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about regarding this? I think I talked about the vests as much as I need to, and just the general 90s vibe of the future. And I just, how I love it.
I think some of that 90s vibe is coming back. At least, the clothing wise. Well,
and okay. So real quick, the flannel tip. Okay. So we saw Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. We saw early 90s, pre-grunge. And I know, music, but fucking that was important back then. It's not the same now, but that was a cultural movement and it influences mainstream culture to a point where we have these like big name fashion shows filled with people wearing fucking flannels, fashionable flannels. When the reality is that came from this group of artists and musicians who lived in the Pacific Northwest. And you know why they wore flannels? Because it's fucking cold there. Yeah, exactly. Practical thing becomes a fashion statement, gets chewed up by grand commerce. So anyway, it's 93 now. We've already had the 92 grunge transformation. So everybody's in flannels.
Right.
I love to see it. It just takes me back to a time.
Do you love flannel?
I wear tons of flannel. I'm a co-founder of something called the Flannel Channel. Nice. Which is a Facebook Messenger group of people, and we would coordinate our flannels. Oh, yeah. So
that's good to know.
Would you like to be a part of the flannel channel?
I think I'm okay.
Do you have flannels?
I don't think that's really my type.
You should make it your type.
More like a print, like big prints.
Okay.
Like prints.
Okay. Yeah. The artists and the actual graphics.
Right.
Yeah. Do you like prints?
Yes.
Okay.
I like flannel.
Yeah, Carolyn, you're an honorary member of the Flannel Channel. We talk about this all the time. You got to get into some buffalo plaids or something like that.
Let me look into it.
All right, look into it. Best. Or don't. That's fine. Anyway, okay. Let's wrap it up, you guys.
Let's wrap it up.
She's hungry. She doesn't want the carrot sticks.
You can see it on my face.
I know. And I
she's wasting away before our eyes.
I respect it. I can make you some pancakes.
No, I started doing this thing where I eat after noon, and then I
You got a window?
Right. And then like, I don't know why I didn't eat before I came here.
Okay.
And then, so it's just been spiraling.
Okay.
Because I had a meeting this morning. Like, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing.
You had a meeting on a Saturday?
Like, because I had to sign, like, I had to go.
Okay.
Stuff like that, so.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. I guess let's do the business. It's a television show that hasn't aged very well, but it's kind of adorable to see.
Yes.
Shrishma Naik, SeaQuest DSV, season 1 episode. I think it's 11, depending on which version of the show you see. Photon Bullet, this is called. Mm-hmm. Do we keep watching this thing?
I mean, I like the episode. I don't know if I like the show. I think we should keep it because it had a very nice vision of the future. And I think they were pretty close to what we did.
Okay, great. I'm shocked, but also delighted.
I don't think if I watch the show continuously, I would like the show.
You will hate it. I guarantee. I don't like it. And I like it, technically. Carolyn Naoroz, SeaQuest DSV, Jonathan Brandis, Roy Scheider, Steve Spielberg.
Yeah, I'm keeping it.
You're
I'm totally keeping it. I mean, there's some things that make like it outdated, like computer graphics or whatever. But when you think about the time period that it was made in and what was possible at the time and like how they sort of were, forward thinking about what kind of technology would we have, like FaceTime and all that. I mean, like, so I'm here for it. Yeah.
Well, and think about the where we are with. Look, I'm not a gamer, but like gamer culture is a huge part of culture these days. And what is it? It's a bunch of people sitting in big old comfy chairs with headsets, playing games in the same room with each other or across the internets or whatever. And that's seen here. That is shown here before it was even a fucking thing.
Right.
And again, for the kids today, I just want to underline the fact that the internets, the real one, the internet, I'm never using it again. It's all internets now. That wasn't a thing. We didn't know about that. You were a very small sliver of the population who knew about that, and you were a fucking nerd.
Right.
As a kid, I had no idea that this was real. To see it now and to see how kind of accurate it is sort of shocking.
True.
But that's why I'm going to keep it for that reason alone, because it is about the future. It's an interesting glimpse of the future, but also it's so 90s.
It is.
It's the most 90s things. Check out those outfits, kids. It is something to behold.
Right.
And I have a soft spot for this show because
you learned a lot through it. I feel like it gave, as a 12-year-old child, it gave you, this is so what it could be.
Well, and I like, you know me, I love adventure and I love wires and all that shit. There's lots of tech stuff in this, and I love Jaws too, and I love baseball, so I love baseball jerseys. So it's everything for me. Eat it up with a spoon, Right. So artifacts real quick, and then we will close it down. Shrishma Naik, do you want to keep anything from this? What do you want to keep?
I want to keep that keyboard, like and the little.
In Node 3 or the one in his bedroom?
In Node 3, whatever they were using to
okay.
It was a really cute
little
keyboard.
Cool. Yeah. You got it. Sis, what do you want to keep?
Roy Scheider.
We can't do this. A prop. I'm drawing a line.
I want one of the SeaQuest like jumpsuits.
Oh, Carolyn, I'm so glad you brought it up because I have one more personal thing to share, which is I had a hat.
Oh.
I went to Suncoast Motion Picture Company. Do you know what that is?
No.
That was a store at the mall. It was the only place outside of Disney World where you could buy movie paraphernalia. So you would go, and it's where you would buy videotapes, basically. But they try to present themselves as, this is Hollywood, okay? It's not just a video store. This is real Hollywood business. So you could buy movie posters. You could buy all of your movie books about the making of Star Wars or what have you. I loved that shit. When I went to the mall, I went to Suncoast. And they would also sell merch for whatever thing was coming out at the time. And one of the things at the time was SeaQuest. So I had a SeaQuest hat with the embroidered logo. It's such a fucking great logo. I used to draw it all the time. It's got that hammerhead shark in the middle of it and everything. I loved it so much. I got to find that hat.
Yeah, I mean, this was probably big reason why I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist, aside from Lisa Frank, was like, I was like, no, I'm going to, obviously the way of the future is I'm going to go work with whales. I wrote a letter to President Bill Clinton about saving the goddamn whales, and he wrote me back.
Aww.
Wait, I'm
or
sorry.
his people wrote me back.
Tell me the story again. I don't remember.
I must have been in 4th grade, and so this would have been 1994.
Okay.
So it would have been like second season of, I mean, this would have been like mid-90s, right? And I wrote a letter to the White House, to President Clinton, about, saving the whales. Like, this is really important to me. And I did a whole project at school about different kinds of whales. And this is something that Emily Leekander and I, we wrote together. We wrote this joint letter. Shout out, Emily. You're awesome.
Family, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
wow. And we got
a response.
Okay.
We got a response that was basically like, I think saving the whales is important too.
Wow.
Which warmed my little 4th grade heart.
That's amazing. Nice.
Because I'm pretty sure they answer like every child's letter.
Yes. And I wrote a letter to Steven Spielberg when I was this age. And I also got a letter back and a signed picture. And it was the most important thing that had ever happened to me.
Do you still have it?
It's probably around somewhere. I wonder. It's probably in the family storage, I would imagine. Because
I'm sure this letter is probably in the family storage somewhere in a box with papers.
Okay. We got to dig this stuff up, just like we have to dig up the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids bee thing. Anyway, okay, jumpsuit for you. For me, I'm going to take Lucas's mini disc collection, and now we're closing it down. So who's up next? I forget. Who's Carolyn Naoroz? What are we watching next week on Old Movie Time Machine? Oops, all 90s.
Okay.
Did you not?
I really want to follow SeaQuest up with Titanic.
Okay, let's just do it, you guys.
It's another Leo film.
We had to rip off the Titanic Band-Aid, so
let's
I feel like we need to
all the ingredients are now in place. We have we've had our Leo, we've had our Bob Ballard, we've had our 90s hair conversation. I mean, I think it's time.
I think it's set up. Let's do it.
Let's talk about the biggest, the baddest of them all, Titanic, next time. Till then, never forget. This has been Old Movie Time Machine. Oops, all 90s. Hey, Shrishma Naik, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Carolyn Naoroz, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And those of you at home, we'll see you on the internets.
After you do the dishes.
No, dishes are done.
Done, man.
Sorry.
I'll see you on the internets.